I started off by saying, let's examine the drug war in this country. I started off by saying that marijuana should be legalized, taking on what I thought at the time was, and it still remains so, as one of those really fixable things in our lives that would make the world a better place.
65% of Americans are now in favor of the move. That's up from 59% at this point last year.
First, before I get started, let me be perfectly clear about one thing. My fight is not against the casual adult use of marijuana. I don't care about that. What I care deeply about is this new industry that is working to convince us that we are consuming something natural while fixing social ills when we aren't.
Your hands are tied on Schedule 1, but it is ludicrous, absurd, crazy to have marijuana in the same level as heroin.
Let's talk pot.
Pot, gas, weed, cannabis, the devil's lettuce, marijuana, a little plant with big talk behind it. Though it's been legalized here in California, hasn't been decriminalized in the minds of others yet, and why not? I sat down with 3 individuals, 3 different ages, but one thing in common, they smoke marijuana. So how come?
I like to smoke because it's a social thing I like to do with my friends.
It's more of a social thing for me. I do enjoy it alone sometimes when I get home from work, really tired and all that, or if I just want to relax. So kind of a mixture of both, but mainly just a social thing with friends and all that.
If I'm by myself, and I just want to relax, I'd like something to take the edge off. I smoke a little bit. I mean, it's nice to just mellow out. Sometimes I get anxiety, and so it helps not control that, but it helps just take the anxious feelings away sometimes.
I do enjoy smoking with the homies and all that, and it is something that we all do share an interest in, so that is pretty cool. Just kind of with video games or going out to eat or anything. At least that's the way I treat it. Just another thing we have in common. I used to do a lot of physical labor jobs, so I noticed that would help me relax. And in the morning, the days that I didn't smoke, sometimes I would wake up so kind of sore, and other days that I did smoke, I would wake up feeling fine, still a little groggy, but my body would feel a lot more rested.
Also, I have to be careful, but I do smoke some of the weed that is out there. It raises my anxiety, so I have to know exactly what I'm smoking. I can't just smoke whatever because it'll actually trigger it. It does help me steady my mind. I'd rather smoke than drink. I don't really like drinking.
A social activity and relaxation after a long day. That seems fun enough, right? But has that still been enough for people to have an issue?
Of course, something that's deemed illicit in our society is always going to carry that connotation. Vaporizers, people are getting sick and things like that, and it's vilified and demonized. And the reality is something like this has been around for hundreds of years, if not thousands, and being in use. But it really depends on who is looking down on you when they decide that marijuana or THC or cannabis is a bad thing.
Oh yeah, mainly for my parents, just because they grew up in Mexico, where it's seen way worse out there. Out there, it's seen kind of how we see meth and heroin out here. So for them, it was what, you're smoking this and that, you're gonna end up being a druggie.
Some of the negative things that I've faced because of marijuana, it's mostly just my family. Sometimes my family is really judgmental. There's oh, why do you do this? Why do you smoke? That's not okay. And it's they're Mexican, they're old school Mexican, so they don't not understand, but they have a different mindset. To them, weed is bad, smoking is bad.
They kind of thought of it in a way of what it would lead to. Because, some people have gone down that path, and that's just kind of, personal choice, whatever that people end up doing. If I enjoyed it, cool. If not, then I'm just all right, check that off my list. I'm never going to do it again. I don't need it per se. I could stop today, tomorrow, next week, whenever, and just, be completely fine. But I just choose to keep indulging in it because I do enjoy it, and I do see the benefits that it provides me.
I think it's because everyone that they know that smokes is not doing very well in their life. They're kind of not lazy, but it's kind of a stigma for them because of it's such a small town and they're not they correlate with, oh, smoking weed gets you stuck here and whatever, but it's like, nah, like it's not like that at all, for me anyways.
I applied for a job one time, and it was a questionnaire, and this is how long ago I was applying for the job almost. And it asks, have you ever tried any drugs? And you can say no. And then later in the questionnaire, as part of the hiring process, it asks, have you ever tried these specific substances? And the difference in word and the wordplay creates a situation where you have to decide whether or not you yourself want to admit that it's a drug. And so being honest, of course, Mark no to all the other ones, and Mark yes to marijuana. Turning that in, talking to HR, and he looks at it and he's like, oh, this isn't going to work. And I'm like, what happened? What's wrong? Without having an interview, right? A second interview, without going past the process. He looked at the piece of paper, looked at the part that I marked. No, I've never tried drugs. Yes, I've done marijuana. And was like, well, marijuana is a drug, so you can't do this. Have this job. And it wasn't a hard job. I mean, we're talking trained monkey labor. Then you see the difference in the gap and how people react to you. And immediately when you were this top-notch candidate, all of a sudden you've dropped to the bottom tier because you occasionally use cannabis. And what can you do?
I just try my best to show them that the things I've accomplished. Me smoking has nothing to do with my accomplishments. I can smoke and do what I need to do. I've graduated from the University of Pacific with a Bachelor of Science in Computer Science and a concentration in graphics and simulations. I definitely think that you can still indulge in smoking weed and live your daily life.
A fear of tarnishing a future image and a career path seems to not be a stress. That being said, is there any negatives to marijuana?
Everybody who's funny probably says munchies, right? I guess there is no vice, because everything that can make you feel a certain way becomes a vice. There's nothing in this world that can't have its drawbacks.
Sometimes, like, if I'm smoking too much, I notice my mind starts to get cloudy. But the best way to describe it is just that cloud. Oh, like you have a cloud in your head. And so, like, you got to detox yourself. It's important for people who do smoke to smoke in moderation. Once you start doing it to it's like, oh man, like you start feeling these things and then you have to take a step back, take a tolerance break, chill out. You got to be able to check yourself and not let it take control of you.
I personally have never really liked thinking of substances either being in control of me or for something for me to fall back on. When I do them, whether it's like smoking, alcohol, or anything else, it's just kind of like out of my own choosing. Like it's like, hey, I chose to drink today. It's not just, oh man, I had a bad day, I want to go drink a beer. That way it doesn't become a crutch for me, and that way I could stand on my own 2 feet and be like, yeah, I do indulge when I'd like to, but I don't need it per se. A lot of people that I do notice, they just kind of only smoke and don't really do anything. Like they let it get in the way of their like kids or work or like school. And me personally, I would never let that happen just because of the way that I am.
One thing that me and my friends talk about is as long as it's not a hindrance, as long as I'm taking care of what I need to do, like paying my bills, making sure I'm going to work, making sure I'm going to school, my homework, and then I smoke weed, it's fine. But then once it becomes like, oh, all my money's going to weed instead of going to bills, or I'd rather smoke weed than go to work, or I'd rather smoke weed than get my homework done, and then like I'm becoming unproductive, that's when I have to take a step back.
As an adult, it's different though. When you're an adult, people think you shouldn't be doing those things, that those are kind of things that need to be left behind in childhood. The thing is, when you get to a level where you do your research and you become experienced enough and you use cannabis responsibly, there really aren't drawbacks.
It's good for us young people or our generation to find that balance, but also the older generations to realize that we can have a balance of smoking weed and doing other things in our daily lives.
I do notice people like to talk shit on or talk about, and it's like that's true for some people but not for all of us. I'm actually a pretty productive high person. I mean, it's just like with anything though, like if you take 5 Advils you're gonna be like, same thing with like blunts, like you smoke 5 blunts, you're gonna be way higher than you would be if you just like moderated yourself.
Since its legalization nearly 2 years ago in 2018, it would appear that major progress has been made on the seemingly stigmatic green plant. But how accurate is that? Has there actually been much of a change in society's eyes in just a couple years? Or is that going to take even more time?
I used to work in a dispensary. I was trying to get ahead of the game because I think that marijuana will be decriminalized. And I think that cannabis will move back into a position where it's actually accepted as just another plant that works differently in your system, right? It being vilified and demonized was a political move, of course. So now, after all these years of politics deciding for the people what's good for them, now politics and politicians are deciding this is now okay for you.
I mean, they're all pretty much for legalization. This is the real first presidential election you're seeing where so many candidates are talking about this issue so openly and saying that they support legalization on the federal level.
Maybe the media is trying to like find something wrong with it because of like a legalization of everything, because at one point it was legalized, it was okay to smoke it, it was okay to have it. I mean, the Declaration of Independence was made with hemp. I think people are trying to find something wrong with it. At its core, it's a plant. It's something that grows from the earth. I don't see why it's such a high ranked drug. Like, that's ridiculous to me. Like, I can see cocaine, heroin, all these things are like, you have to make these things. Marijuana, you can throw the seeds in the ground, grow it.
So that was like one of the first things that we did, is make a really good hemp protein powder. And when we were looking into it, we were like, I can't even believe that you can't grow this.
I think what it's going to do is change the collective psyche of the older generation, or the people who were taught that it's a bad thing.
People are definitely more open to it, but there are still people in other like places and areas that, you know, they're just kind of like so look at it in a bad way. I think it would honestly become just like Tylenol and like cigarettes, you know, like if somebody tells you like, oh, I'm gonna go to the store and buy cigarettes, you're like, oh, okay, they're just gonna go to like a gas station. But when you tell people like, oh, I'm gonna go buy weed, it's like, oh, you have to go to like a man on the street in a shady alleyway or something, or like, you know, go to the dispensaries. I just feel like it might become like that over here, but it would definitely take some time just for us to get used to it.
The consciousness it creates and it affects isn't those people that are younger or more educated or more experienced. You know, the irony of that is the people who would probably benefit most from it are the ones who look down upon it the worst. As public perception changes and comes along with the movement of the younger demographic and people who are more aware, it'll make for a better world for the people who feel like they're ashamed or they have to be in the shadows and use it because it's deemed an illicit drug, when it actually helps them.
Whether it's preferred or looked down upon, it isn't very likely that marijuana is going anywhere. If anything, it's grown even stronger in the wave of pop culture and social media. So what about these three individuals? What have they got to say to the opposition?
I would just say, I don't really know what to tell you guys, you know, like, it's just the way that I choose to live my life. I know some people see it in a negative way, some people see it in a positive way. You know, some people are going to use it for good, some people are going to use it for bad. It just kind of really depends on the person. But me personally, I just see it as like a plant, you know, like a flower. Anything you see, you could just grow it in the ground, pick it up, you know, kind of like potatoes, apples, cherries, you know, damn near the same thing. So yeah, just live the life the way you want it to, huh?
I would say, I can see how you feel that way, and I totally understand your perspective. If that's how you want to live your life, go ahead. That's fine. But this is how I want to live my life. Please respect me and what I want to do. Until I find that it's no longer working for me, then I take a step back. But until then, you worry about you, I worry about me.
I would say, if you put my accomplishments on paper, and they started with graduated college, have a career, own a few homes, own multiple cars, raise kids that graduated college, takes care of family, all these things. Never been in jail, never been in prison, never been in a courtroom outside of jury duty. Very last thing was uses THC for insomnia or to get sleep. Would you look past the list of accomplishments that society thinks we all have to attain to and go, oh no, THC, this person just got lucky, they're a hooligan or something? That's not the truth. Everything starts with a change of mind, a change of mindset. And once people open the dialogue and they get to know the other person a little more, a lot of times they find that what they learned from that person is more important than what they thought they knew about that person. It's something that is a part of our world, and it's not going to go away, and it's not evil.